Hey everyone, welcome to our brand new podcast. Let's dive in. This is, I guess we can call this season one, episode one.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about Victor. If you would like to talk about the book.
So basically, the concept is to dive into a book each week, and that's why our name of the podcast is Let's Dive In. This week's topic is Invention and Innovation: A Brief History of Hype and Failure by Vaclav Smil. We're going to be exploring the key ideas and basically the main topics of that book, and yeah, we're probably going to go off on some wilder topics.
Okay, so if you would like to start off with whatever it is you have in mind, Victor.
So I feel like a brief introduction of the book would make sense. So Vaclav Smil talks in this book about exponential growth, about how humanity evolved and had like main innovation waves during the past like 3 centuries, and it talks about how most of them fail.
Okay, fair. Anything specifically? Do you want to talk about like today? Because I personally feel like when you talk about innovation waves today, today is a big one. We see AI, we see deep tech, we see things coming out of nowhere, brand new. I mean, today we spoke about that Rabbit application, right? That what was it called? A mobile device.
The Rabbit Air 1. It's a brand new device that implements AI in real life, and yeah, that's pretty interesting. But
do you think this is one of the major ones? Something close to maybe potentially like the Industrial Revolution?
Yeah, that's hard to tell. Because to go back on the book, one of the main topics about it is how like we have hype like these days about AI, about deep tech, about quantum computing, all those new things that just like appear out of nowhere. And the same way ChatGPT appeared like less than 2 years ago, that pretty much changed like a lot of lives. And yeah, it's mostly about how sometimes things that are called breakthrough are not. And actually, one of the first things that is talked about in the book is airships. I find this fascinating. How like during the 19th century, everyone, but by everyone I mean like all governments, all institutions, they full on believed that airships was going to be the future of transport, and that we were all going to use airships like for the next 500 years.
Yeah, no, same. I completely agree. Like when it comes to like perfectly airships, it's this big thing flying in the sky. You look at it, it's crazy, and then no, it fails. One crash, and we forget about it. We realize there's not that much potential in it.
And airplanes come into play. Complete change.
We get airplanes, but we don't progress much from them. We had the Concorde, to be fair, and again, this goes back to what you were saying about how, yes, we have innovation, but then it ends up backtracking right to where it was before because we had the Concorde, and what happened to that? I mean, it was a really nice thing for rich people to fly in a plane and go bam to France, wherever you wanted to go in like less than 8 hours, but at the same time, inevitably, it failed, and we went right back to where we were. Something that, if you want.
No, yeah, just to give a brief history about like the airship and how it was a complete failure, because I feel like it's nice to dive in that, and the book like talks greatly about it.
Of course.
We have that thing. It starts right off in France. Proud to say it. When Montgolfier brothers actually introduced the idea of the Montgolfier, this big balloon like that just flies. In 1783, like in front of the king. So, it's a big thing. They present that thing and they're like super proud of it. The king is fucking impressed because we can fucking fly, which is great. And from that, we see like a big leap of innovation. The French and the German like create airships. And which is nice about it is like it's lighter than air because of the gas that's put in it. So you don't need a lot of like propulsion to make it happen. And in the 1900s, dirigibles like start to actually be on the market. You know, of course, the famous Zeppelin. It's a German guy who created this model. And we all believed that for 30 years, until the crash of 1937, it was an amazing idea. And by that, I mean, it was a full-on thing. Like transatlantic travels were being made, 10,000 kilometers at a speed of 10,000 kilometers at a speed of like approximately 100 kilometers per hour were like being achieved. And even people like civilized, normal people could use airships to go to New York from Edinburgh, for example. So it was a full-on thing.
So yeah, no, but you basically what you're saying, it was today's airplane, but no, but see, same thing comes for airplanes. When airplanes were introduced, they were failing mainly because they were flying at the same altitude of as the weather. So, and we practically saw no innovation from that. But what did change it was, I think it was. You've watched? Have you watched Aviation by Leonardo DiCaprio?
No,
it's
but it's on my watch list.
Okay, so it's about Howard Hughes, and basically what he did was he realized you can just fly above the weather, and that just changed everything. He introduced like food and all that, and people started progressing. But again, we didn't move much above that. We didn't change much, except for the Concorde. But we went right back to that. I guess maybe I don't know. Maybe the A380, which with its design, that they use like eagles to design. I mean, literally.
Yeah, that's true. But to like actually understand how much it was deep in people's mind that airships were going to be the next thing, Lord Kelvin, which was like president of the Royal Society from 1890 to 1895, stated heavier than air-flying machines are impossible. So that's like to comprehend how much it was like deep into people's mind, and that yeah, everyone was believing in it. The US Army like had a military program dedicated to this, used it like to bomb places, used it to transport like people, and it was seen as the future. Until, of course, but the famously known crash of 1937, the Hindenburg disaster. Like you probably all have that picture of mine of like that big airship just taking flames and being full on fire, that killed like 36 people. And that was one of the main like media event at the time. It was a big thing. So that's pretty much where it stopped, and like people started being in disbelief about this invention.
Okay, and the transition from that to like I keep coming back to this, but transition from that to planes, how did that go? Like, was it just a boom, or was it like an inevitable thing to happen?
So basically, planes had been there for like since the beginning of the 1900s as well. But at the beginning, we needed a lot of power to like just take off, and they were reaching only a speed of like 100 kilometers, maybe 200 kilometers. And that's pretty much a good timing, because in 1937, when the Hindenburg crash, we start having airplanes with like 2,000 kilometers of reach, which is pretty decent, and to have like speeds of 250 kilometers. So that was a pretty smooth transition from there, because of course the airships were not seen as reliable at all, and the plane started to actually take a lot of place on the media, and also in the armies, because of course we know 1937 was on the verge of a war.
Yeah, so no, but like going back to what you were saying about like the whole crash situation that happened, like, do you think in general, when it comes to humanity, at least this is my opinion, only when something bad happens do we feel like we need to actually start to make change? I feel like major innovations that happen throughout history are always happening either when it's a war, either happen when there's a major failure. Like, do you think if that crash never happened and we managed to kind of in a way fix that airship, right? Not completely.
And you think we could have like kept on going, and today we would have full-on airships?
I think potentially we could have, but we would have had really advanced airships, or at least kept in sort of way the design, because I mean they were effective. Maybe we would have eventually. Like, do you believe no matter the crash, no matter what, we would have transitioned 100%? Because I mean, airships. I don't think you can do what you can now. Go sit on an A380, go from Dubai to New York, and bam, you're there.
Yeah, no,
so
that's true.
That's what you think? Okay, yeah. Because so this isn't one of those things that like you need a major war for it to happen. Because like a quote that I have from Henry Ford is, he said, "If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses." So do you think that people would have been fine for like? Do you think we would have lost like 10 years?
That's actually a possible outcome. At the same time, there was the Second World War, and airplanes were becoming way more efficient. So I think that would have been like a transition that we would have made eventually, like anyway. But yeah, I see a possibility that we lose straight up 5 years just because that crash did not happen. And no, but you still need to understand that we did not fully abandon the idea of airships. Like the US military today still have one branch dedicated to funding airships research.
Yeah, and the US, I mean, but at the same time, you cannot deny that the US has spendings that are completely insane. I mean, they have a space force. I mean, yes, it makes sense, but then some aspect of that space force makes no sense. I mean, they're preparing for what possibly might never happen, a goddamn alien invasion. I mean, the US loves to do random things. So do you think that's just a thing that they invest into, or do you think that's something that actually might have potential?
That's a good question, because I feel like $1 trillion in spending allows for a lot of dead weight and like just random stuff. So but I don't know enough about this, but I know there's still like an airship lobby that lobbies for more research about airships. That's still something that exists today. And that also, I would say, illustrates how like lobbies are in like the system in capitalism. I have a quick example about that the book mentions, that talks about how like some innovations can be really bad for humanity, sometimes because of lobbies, sometimes because it's the only option we have. It talks about gasoline with lead in it.
I think it's lead.
Okay, yeah, my bad. So gasoline with lead in it, and lead has been known like toxic for the human brain for
yes.
no, but for like the Greek antique Greek knew how lead.
It's no news.
It's no news, but because it was the only way to make engines like work sustainably, and because there was a lot of money involved, you had like big lobbies about this lead gasoline, and even with like concerns from Harvard students, from DC scientists, and like all that thing going on, it still has been a thing. And from 1922 to 2000, so like it's more than 70 years, right? It's crazy. Gasoline with lead in it was authorized in Europe. Like it was just something that come on, and it was proved during the meantime that it caused children impairment, late growth, like unborn children, and like below rates of IQ, and that was still something that was kept on going because one, lobbies, two, a lot of money involved, and three, we don't have a solution, a sustainable solution for it.
I mean, like, to be fair, like this is seen throughout history. I mean, me being from Ukraine, I have a perfect example. I mean, we have Chernobyl, and the Chernobyl, yes, nuclear reactor makes sense. It would have been devastating even if it happened now, like in France.
Yeah.
But the Soviet Union, being the Soviet Union, they decided to use graphite because it's cheaper, and then because we had graphite, well, a lot of people died. Well, I mean, this is again the question of like being capitalistic pricks, and countries being like, I don't give a shit as long as I make money.
No, that's why that even capitalism being like an undoubtable force to drive innovation, yeah, that's for sure. You need to accept that sometimes misallocation of resources can happen because of asymmetric information, because of lobbying, because of competition. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. For the Soviet Union, they couldn't stand the idea of countries having anything above them. But again, they didn't have the financials to go against the United States or Europe at the time, so they just built a bunch of graphites and everything. Graphite. I mean, eventually, that's the thing about innovation. Sometimes you have to look at it from the perspective of, I will take the initial risk. I will take the initial risk of losing a lot of money, investing more than what I would prefer. Because what ended up happening is they had to change every single nuclear reactor.
Yeah, no, that's a true thing. But like fundamentally, do you believe that innovation needs to bring a net positive to humanity, or not at all?
I don't. I think sometimes it ends up being one. It doesn't always have to be.
Okay, do you consider TikTok, for example, straight up as an innovation? Yes or no?
I think no. I don't think it's innovation. I think it's just a different way of doing things, a different way of social media.
Okay, but you have a
but
billion
it's not innovation.
users.
It's not like something completely revolutionary. Because like, I mean, we had the patent for electric cars was like in the 1800s, and then that's innovation, but it wasn't used or interpreted like until now, like by Elon Musk, Tesla. I mean, like we have innovation and then it's useless, and then it ends up being useful like 200 years later. I mean, you yourself know a bunch of examples about that. So it depends. So like it's all about timing. I think it's all about timing because again, technocentrism. We talked about this today. Like it. Sometimes you just need a new player, and someone else could just develop the same thing but market it better.
But no, the same way Apple, like to say it nicely, fucked in the ass IBM with 100 times less budget. I feel like, and the same way you talked about graphite like 1 minute ago, having infrastructure that is not efficient brings inevitably a new player that just like takes over. Because when you have like all that infrastructure lock-in, where you like spent 10 billions of like sunk cost, and you had to build all that thing and like implement all those processes, and like have tens of thousands of people working in your company, you're not efficient anymore.
Yes.
And that's how I think that the same way for graphite, you guys had to build the whole thing again.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to repeat certain things. I mean, virtual reality was introduced in like the 1990s, and I don't think my parents knew about virtual reality when my mom was 10 years old. I mean, it seems like a brand new thing, but it isn't. But at the same time, it is. I mean, the question is, did they have the technology to incorporate it, or maybe if Steve Jobs existed back in the 1990s, virtual reality would have existed over 30 years ago. We have no idea. Again, that's going back to my point. Like, we don't know if we had the right people, whether it was the technology, whether it was the resources. It depends. Everything depends. It depends. This is a debate.
Many variables.
Open discussions. All we have is open discussions.
That's true.
Anything else that you want to look back, maybe from the book?
No, but I think that's a topic like talked about in the book, and but to continue to go on, like to explore those key ideas that are raised by the book, we can go on about the invention of the hyperloop, the vacuum train,
the hyperloop.
The hyperloop. So just to give you a quick like news background, Hyperloop One, the company of Brian Johnson, the UK billionaire that's invested in a bunch of things. They raised $400 million in 2015. Great news. Everyone was hyped about it. It was going to be the new next thing. Like trains going at 1,000 kilometers, traveling like all over the world. And bankrupt. Like, what date are we? Like the 20th of January. They bankrupted, I think, the 30th of December. So like 21 days ago.
The craziest thing was I was there. I mean, I've seen them attempt to build it in Abu Dhabi. They were hyping it up like it was the most insane thing on earth. And bankrupt.
And so, like, just quick question to you: when do you think was the first idea of a vacuum train like elaborated or talked about?
Oh God, it's gonna be far back, isn't it? I'll give you like, the 2000s, early 2000s.
1826. Like it's actually wild.
1826.
1826. 1825 actually. So
that's exactly my point with innovation. Like you could have something that was ages ago, and then like human beings are like, you know what? I'll try it again, and then it either fails again.
But it failed again for Hyperloop.
I mean, failed again. I would love to go.
So just to give a quick history background, in 1825, initial proposal for vacuum tube travel were made, and so you're living in London, you have your like journal, you just wake up, morning journal of the Monday morning, company proposal, they wanted to raise 20 billion of today's pounds to build a line from London to Birmingham, I think.
Birmingham, yes.
Birmingham, a 600 kilometer line. By raising 20 billion pounds. And how they wanted to do it was doing a really low pressure tube to put a train or some pods inside it and maintain the vacuum with steam engines, which totally failed. But it's just like a quick recap about how even an idea introduced more than 200 years ago, a bit less, but pretty much 200 years ago, can still not work today and has repeatedly not worked. Like the plans for a line also came back in 1911 and 1913. It was the fellow Russians who revived that idea. The project failed again, and every 10 years, new patents were like made in the US to have those vacuum tubes trains. And even today, in the Hyperloop One, supported by Richard Branson, went bankrupt despite $400 million in total fundings.
So based on the fundings, you don't think it's potentially it still could be a technological aspect that's failing, or do you think it's I think it's efficiency, its ability to perform. Actually, like you said, like what we were talking about like 10 minutes ago, ability to generate a profit, because again, from everything I've seen, the Hyperloop fits in. I mean, max 30 people, and you need that thing to be moving people in and out. So do you think it's because it's like a VIP service that it wouldn't work? Because I mean, the Concorde, a part of it why it didn't work was because it wasn't taking in
Profits.
enough profits. But it was really fast, just like the Hyperloop. So is it the
No,
question of technology, or is it the question of
Practicality.
Of practicality.
I would say it's a mixture of both, but you still have that really bad thing that to maintain vacuum on long lines like 600
Yes.
kilometers, you need a lot of power in a lot of specific points. And so basically you end up to a point in which with $5 or maybe $500 of explosive, at any point in that line, you make it blow up and people just
Again, it's a
the
safety
same as
aspect.
Titanic. Like the safety, like the cost of safety is horrendous.
Okay,
horrendous.
so my question to you is: do you think these, however much, so you're saying one project is 400 million, another project is 100 million, whatever it is, all of this combined, do you think the hassle that they had to go through in a sort of way, a technological hassle, everything they've definitely learned things throughout the process of making one. Is that just a waste of time? Because at the same time, if you look at it, like, people were hyping up 3D television, and now I don't know who uses it.
No, that's true.
But again, that helped us lead to what today is the VR that Apple introduced.
Yeah, no, that's true.
But do you think it's like we have to go through those little steps of stuff that aren't exactly
Milestones.
great innovations?
Milestones, basically.
So do you think a Hyperloop is a milestone to potentially a train? For example, we're sitting in Madrid, a metro system that kind of incorporates technology from a Hyperloop?
Vacuum. Yeah, no, that's really possible. And on the fact of spending money for the sake of profit, I feel like sometimes you reach that barrier of it's amazing enough to just throw money at it until it works. The main example I have is fusion, nuclear fusion. That has been introduced in 1920 when Arthur Eddington suggested that star energies basically comes from nuclear reactions, and until then we've been debating about how to implement it. We've been throwing billions and billions and billions in like different organizations, different ways of implementing it, and it still doesn't work today. But for the sake of that kind of grail of infinite energy, we're still continuing to throw money at it. So for something like the 3D television, I understand that throwing money at it is not specifically a good idea. But for inventions like nuclear fusion, it might be for the sake of humanity, like not capitalism, for example.
I mean, yes, potentially. I mean, yes, but at the end of the day, capitalism will take advantage of whatever it has. I mean, yeah, but nuclear fusion, it's...
It relies purely
it is a game
on
changer.
government spending.
Yeah, because it demands incredible amount of money, stupid amount of money, you could say.
Yeah, but if we were close enough, like maybe only one milestone enough from nuclear fusion, I wouldn't see an issue in seeing a private company go on about that. I feel like it's just because we're so far away from it, we don't know where we're going. We probably have a broken compass.
Yeah.
That we don't know where we are going.
Just trying it.
And because of that, capitalism would not allow it to be an idea. It's purely because of governments found, because of this sake of humanity. And to go on about hype and failure and the topic of the book, in 1955, so at the Conference of the Atom in Geneva, the first edition, it was announced by the president of it that we would control nuclear fusion within 20 years. So in 1955. So that brings into 1975.
A very, very inspired time of the world.
Yeah. And so that pretty much didn't work. In 1985, Gorbachev, is that how you pronounce it?
Gorbachev.
Yeah. Presented the idea of the ITER project to the French president. And from there, the ITER project about this nuclear fusion has 35 member states, appeared in 2006, and the costs at the beginning were 5 billion to launch it in 2020. Do you know what are today's cost of the ITER project? 20 billion. We spent 20 billion with a 5 billion initial spending, and the initial launch at full power that was supposed to happen in 2020 is now projected to 2035. So I feel like that illustrates the idea of when we're too far from an achievement, and that capitalism doesn't see value in that thing. It's only governments that are able to fund it, but sometimes not for the best.
I mean, yes, it's like when you start off investing, you throw your rocks everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't just throw everything.
But
into
big
one
rocks,
basket.
20 billion, big rocks.
Big rocks, but yeah, you don't keep your money in one basket. At the end of the day, you have to try everything. I mean, yes, we're so far off, but again, it's about getting your eggs, or I guess your rocks, in the right basket, and then you might just hit that strike. So yes, I completely agree.
If the compass is not broken, because if we're
we could be completely wrong. We could be completely unachievable. But I think again, like what I said in the beginning with technocentrism. It is inevitable that
growth is inevitable.
That humans will just figure it out. I mean, before we started this, you were showing me quotes of people completely doubting telephones, people completely doubting nuclear anything, people completely doubting the applicability of airplanes.
I think I can quote a few of those. I just have the pictures here. The bomb will never go off. I speak as an expert in explosives, Admiral William Duthie, U.S. Atomic Bomb Project.
I mean, exactly. There's my point. Like, it's people say things. Like
no, but they are experts. They are experts. They're the best in their field. But you can be so wrong about the future even by being an expert. Like, it's crazy.
Exactly.
And you don't realize it until you see all those quotes, like all those experts. Every single one of them missing out on what the future is going to look like.
That goes back to throwing your eggs in different baskets, because as you could think that you throwing something exactly and an expert of nuclear fusion, but sometimes you have to throw it in a different direction, and that person might actually be able to get it. And the person who thought he was the expert was like, oh yeah, no, he was.
Yeah, that's sometimes having an objective.
You need an anomaly, and the anomaly wins. You have to bet that 1 out of the 10 times you are wrong. You have to always assume that you are, and I mean. Throughout history, we've proven that.
This actually works. The first computer was built. Maybe like I don't have the precise date. I don't wanna misinformation people.
I mean, yeah.
But basically, the first computer was built with vacuum tubes that were created during the 18th century. So vacuum tubes were being built in the 18th century just to test electric stuff, basically to test electric reactions, and when you build that computer, you just need those vacuum tubes. That's an anomaly, for example. If you had the objective of building the computer, you don't think about those vacuum tubes. You don't think about them. And that's pretty much the anomaly that we're talking about. That little thing of like...
It's Murphy's Law, in a certain way of what can happen will. It's like things happen unexpected. I mean, the first, I guess... You said computer, but I think the first proper computer in a certain way was with in World War II, when they were making figuring out the Enigma, when he built the machine that was capable of...
I don't know about that.
Okay, so basically they hired the scientist, and they completely opposed him because he spoke not a word of German, and he was capable of building a computer that was able to crack something that was completely uncrackable. It's sometimes throwing your basket again throwing your eggs in a random basket and being capable of. I mean, he revolutionized everything. He ended the war and also created what now turned into.
And then the war. I don't know about specifically that one, but.
No, but when it came to World War II, they were capable of intercepting.
Most messages, yeah, that's true.
Yes, yeah.
And to go back on nuclear fusion, because I love that topic,
yes, I know,
and it's gonna be amazing. Like the latest numbers is that we've maintained a temperature of 160 million degrees, like in a tokamak. So it's a device that just like pretty much holds that plasma here, and. To give you an order of idea, like the temperature of the sun at the center is 15 million degrees. So we've achieved 10 times that, and we're still not able to achieve fusion because of various factors. But like to come back on that anomaly thing, it's what we need for fusion, it's what we need for AGI, it's what we need for most innovations.
Yeah, it's also the question of like how we get our inspiration. Sometimes our inspiration happens naturally, and like something like nuclear fusion is something we see out in the universe, and we're like capable of proving it with theories, and we're claiming that we can do it ourselves. Like it in a way links to something I want to talk about. Sometimes nature tells us what to do. So now we're living in a generation, I believe, where we're really practical and concentrating on this new aspect of genetic engineering. And I mean, the story with it actually begins in the late 1980s, early 1990s. Scientists were studying bacteria that was noticing sort of peculiar patterns in their DNA, and these patterns, later named clustered regularity, they intercepted short palindromic repeats, which were basically
I don't know what that is.
basically the bacteria's defense system was to actually, against viruses, was to cut the DNA.
Okay, and that's how we built like CRISPR.
And that's how CRISPR happened.
No, actually?
Yes, that's how it happened.
Oh, that's wild.
Basically, we realized that's how sometimes we don't discover things ourselves. We see it happen, we have theories, and we believe we can incorporate it to ourselves. So that's how it happened. We never actually thought it was possible until we saw something natural do it.
But that's actually some physicists are talking about this like nowadays. And I don't know if you know about Guillaume Verdon. He's like a physicist, and he did cosmology, quantum physics, and thermodynamics, those three big chunks of physics. And he believes that the future of innovation will be in thermodynamics, like in the mesosphere, in the biology, in the way nature creates things, interacts, and does all of this, and that's where the main pole of innovation is gonna come. Yeah, and that's mainly why I think you made the great point with CRISPR. Yeah, most of what we learn, most of what we see comes from nature. Oh, and actually, I have a really it's a tweet I saw 2 days ago about like how much do you think the invention of the plane would be delayed if we didn't see birds flying?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thought.
I read that, I had to sit for 5 seconds to think about it. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's again like gaining inspiration from, I guess, literally from nature. Like I said, with CRISPR, we saw it literally with bacteria.
No, okay, but I want an estimation. How long?
You want a number?
I want a number for, like, in your opinion, how long of different. We would never have that idea. Why would we even think about flying?
Yeah, but we've never seen anything else drive.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
We've never seen anything drive, and we created the wheel when? So the point being, we've never seen something drive. Humans are all about doing things quickly, being efficient.
No, but at least a
profit.
good 200 years, you know?
200 years is basically you saying we don't have it still now.
Depends. No, it's too broad to answer. Actually, there's no real quantification.
I think it's more of like one of those, again, like Instagram, like deep thought things. But when you actually come down to it, you realize human beings are. We don't see. You don't see a nuclear explosion.
Yeah. No,
yeah, and we see. We like that's the thing.
But you see a volcano going fucking wild. That also happens.
Like, I think I haven't read the whole book, but the end of it kind of talks about
nuclear fission.
Okay, yeah. So
So the last part. So yeah, let's come back to the book.
No, that's literally when it comes to nuclear weapons, nuclear fission. We split an atom and we're like unlimited energy. Yes, but we can blow up 2 cities.
We can. Yeah. Pretty much. Those are the bad sides of it. Depending on the perspective,
on your point of view,
and the point of view, of course.
Yes.
So yeah, the last part about the book talks about how like some great innovations were expected to take over the world, but the same way the airships, but about inventions that are still going on today, and it talks about nuclear fission. So nuclear fission, when discovered, is seen as like this great source of energy in which we just like are able to produce carbon neutral energy, which is also like a big topic at the moment. And at the time it was seen as future of energy, and today only accounts for 10% of electric production, varies from 5% in China from fission, and in France, which are like the global leaders in the world in nuclear fission, it's a 70% of electricity. So it's not a global change.
But in your opinion, it's not
low.
a global change,
Slow.
but it's something. Do you think that's going to progress eventually into the future? Do you think that you're saying 10%? Do you think this changes?
But I think there's a lot of lobbies against it. There's a lot of counterpowers that debate about it. But inevitably, if we want to diverse ourselves from like those fossil fuels, which eventually we will not have, and so to be able to keep like this like way of living and having like plenty of energy, I think nuclear energy is mainly the way we need to transition. But to understand how big of a fuck up it is, in the early 70s, the Atomic Energy Committee in the US, biggest thing on earth, predicts that by 2000 we will have 1,000 nuclear reactors working, and in 2023 in the US, it's 93 working. So like 100 times less, 24 years after their prediction, and that comes from two things, which also like pretty much explains why innovations can also fail. Is that from the 1920s to the 1930s, electric consumption was multiplied by 2. 30s to 40s multiplied by 2.2. 40s to 50s multiplied by 2.2 as well. And you're in that momentum of like, we need way more electricity, way more electricity, way more electricity. And so they have those big projects of going on about like fission, how we will need 10 times more energy in the 30 years. And in the end, that reduced by a lot. There was like a 50%, I don't want to mess up the numbers, but around 50% increase in nuclear needs, in electricity needs during the 70s. Then it was like around 50% the same during the 80s, 90s. And we even consumed less electricity from the 2010s to the 2020s.
You think this is all a disadvantage, or?
No, this is not a disadvantage, but it broke, like, straight up broke the momentum of nuclear energy because we didn't need that much electricity. They ordered a lot of nuclear reactors, which ended up costing way more than they expected to. So they just pretty much abandoned that project. And today, nuclear energy is not that big of a thing because we rely on fossil fuels more than electricity to run the society in general.
Yeah, and I think that's based on competitiveness. You just want to stay ahead of the game, so countries don't have time to, the fossil fuels are easy.
Yeah, easy, cheap, and I think it's again this idea of sunk costs, the way of if you spend already 100 billion in building infrastructures for producing energy, you're not gonna spend 100 other billion for.
Back to capitalism.
Goes back to capitalism. Exactly.
It always goes back to capitalism.
It always goes back to in a bad way or in a good way. It depends.
Even if our alternative is better, they're just not gonna let it happen. But again, going back, is that a disadvantage, or is just like we don't need this energy?
I know, but fossil fuels, even if they're bad for the environment and have many other negative externalities, I read that a few days ago. A barrel of fuel, only one of them, if you transplant it to the number of hours of a worker in general, of human workforce, one barrel of fuel is 25,000 hours of work. If you translate it to workforce in energy produced. And so the discovery of oil and fossil fuels inevitably led to growth. And that's how we're where we are today. Without oil, that would not be the case for sure. That led to industrial revolutions, that led to scaling up things.
Even today.
Scaling up things. And we still heavily rely, unfortunately, on those fossil fuels. So we have to accept that it's a big part of why humanity evolved, and it has negative externalities. The same way. It's consistent.
So it does what it has to do.
It does what it has to do, and capitalism.
And it's hard to move from that.
Yeah, it's hard to move from that. From a cheap energy way of doing things. But we usually accept negative externalities when it's worth it. Like just to scale up numbers. And to give another perspective, cars, which is a great innovation, kills 1 million people a year. Do you think governments in general would accept 1 million deaths a year for a vaccine? Never. It's not something that would come up to their mind, and it's something they would
Not officially.
No, that's also true. But they will not accept that, and you accept those negative externalities if they have a positive up thrust
that justifies the means.
The end always goes back to Machiavelli.
I mean, it's outweighing the pros and cons at the end of the day. So it makes sense that they do what they do. It goes back to what I was saying about we won't do something until we desperately need it. So as long as it works until it stops, we won't change. So even a lot of our innovations are based on we're forced to do it. For energy, we wouldn't do solar panels until we realized that
we need them.
Because we're just burning everything. And
Yeah,
killing
no,
everything.
that's true. That's
I
true.
mean, yeah. I mean, we always find a way. You mentioned something about like trees consuming CO2. What was it?
Oh yeah, no, it's a new innovation about but that goes back to technocentrism and
Yes.
how like innovation will eventually save us if we also change like our way of consumptions. Is that French startup? I don't know the name. I will put it like in the description
Yes.
if we have like on YouTube. It's a startup from France that create plants, genetically modifies them. Go back to CRISP, even if it's a different way of doing things. Genetically modify the plants so they absorb 30 times as much CO2 as a normal plant, which is wild. Like if you have the capacities to scale it up, it's again it's a prototype. Like it's not something that, and we go back on that. Is it actually going to work, or is it hype and failure the same way fucking vacuum trains are hype and failure? It could be. It could be.
I mean, it's like the idea of let's go to the Sahara Desert, put a bunch of solar panels, and boom,
And
we
yeah,
have energy for
does
the whole
it
world.
work?
But,
Yeah.
does it work? Though?
Does it work? Exactly. The same way Elon Musk talks about those batteries and everything. Yes. So absorbs 30 times as much. If it's scalable, it's amazing. Can build forests with this. Genetically modified trees that absorb like way more CO2, and that will solve a lot of problems. I know that in France, by 2030, we want to plant 1 billion trees. This is something announced by the president. If that billion of trees was genetically modified the same way this plant is, that equivalents to 30 billion trees. Like this is just like a multiplying factor that would be wild if we are able to scale it. But will we be able to scale it? That's a question we cannot answer today.
Basically, found a way to make trees more efficient. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
that's the thing with humans. We find a way, but at the same time, going back to like nuclear fission, like we create things, we outweigh the pros and cons, but sometimes, and this is something I think that's something really interesting we can talk about is when we do innovate, we have nuclear fission, and it's the idea of, I mean, potentially you have
Infinite
unlimited
energy.
energy, but
Yeah.
at the same time, we have two guys, and we have the Manhattan Project, and we have this consistently throughout history where we have something that could potentially just revolutionize something, but we become
Or in 10 years, humanity just ends because of
Yeah.
nuclear wars.
We
and
always
and
risk it.
that's it.
It's unpredictable. It's the sad thing about thing about life. Like if we just concentrated on purely becoming just as efficient as possible, work together and made it all work, it would be perfect. But we're not perfect.
We're not perfect, but machines might be.
And
That
is
can
where
lead us.
yes.
That can lead us to AI, AGI, all those breakthroughs of those past
And
weeks.
my question to you is: do you think, based on that eventually, now this is like something everyone talks about, we leave the rationality of a human, and we move on to the artificial rationality of AI, and then that will decide. Like, do you believe? Because I don't think if we correctly do things, AI and future technologies, program it correctly, it will remove the factor of it will
Randomness.
it will look at nuclear fission as purely energy instead of building a giant bomb, and potentially it can continue doing that. And then do we rely on that completely? And then us humans, we just
Do we accept the fact that we're no more in charge?
and do we
Basically.
accept that someone's better than us for the first time ever?
Okay, so first of all, that's something we're not really close to, I would say.
Are we?
But there's two main concepts about this: AGI and ASI, so artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence. The way Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, one of the biggest tech entrepreneurs,
Jewish man of the year.
Jewish man of the year. How he defines it is AGI, which we're really relatively close to. It was expected to arrive in 2040, like 5 years ago. Now we're talking about 2029, 2025. We're getting really close to that.
Before you go into that, just so that our audience understands, how does AGI function?
AGI, to define it, as Sam Altman says, is the median human being. So we have brain processing capabilities of the average human. So maybe 105 IQ, able to learn.
Now you're saying AGI is close, but like a minute ago you said we're not.
No, that's why you need to differentiate AGI and ASI. AGI, we're close to it, but it's a median human being. So it's a tool that everyone in his computer will be able to use and will have a personal assistant to do anything. So that's great. That will increase productivity a lot. Like the IMF talks about how it will change, like International Monetary Fund talks about how it will like change up to 60% of the workforce in
You just double the population.
yeah, basically double the population in developed countries at least, because our workforce is heavily based on like finance, all those jobs. So that increases productivity, but the things you're talking about actually not being in charge anymore is more an ASI thing, in which we're like, it's not a 105 IQ human being, it's a fucking monster that we're not even able to comprehend all the reasoning. And that's a point we're gonna reach 10, 20, 30 years, we don't know that. We're like probably gonna be alive during that time. And yeah, humans are gonna have to accept, the same way we accepted at some point in history that Earth was not in the center of the universe, then yeah, the human brain is not in the center of intelligence.
But do you think it could be quicker than what you're predicting, 20, 30 years? Because at the end of the day, AI it can be a self-learning system. It learns by itself.
Yeah, no, it could be 10 years.
The difference between the first flight and going to the moon was
60, 70 years.
50 years, something like this.
Yeah.
And like that's not a self-learning system. That's without.
Yeah.
So that's because it was you again who mentioned to me the Olympiad for math. I mean,
Google DeepMind.
So we have the brightest minds in the world competing on like a crazy math competition, and then something because you said
only for geometry for now. But
okay, fine. But you said it didn't have practice, or what was it?
So basically, Olympiad's problem, which is the hardest competition of math pre-graduation.
Okay.
They have the hardest math problems, and it's 5 problems per year, if I recall well. I might be saying total bullshit, but the main point is that Google DeepMind's model almost reaches the level of, in geometry at least, of the best minds in each country. Yeah. I agree with you. That's wild.
But I find it insane because I remember when, I mean, maybe I didn't catch up to it at the second release, but I remember when I started using ChatGPT, right, for university, whatever. Within a month, I remember seeing these posts and people saying, it's passing medical exams, it's passing lawyer bars, it's passing everything. And this is a month into it. A month. I mean, 2 years back,
less than 1 week ago, Google released a blind study by Google Search, in which they say that an AI is better than a doctor in empathy, in diagnosis, in management plans.
Yes.
It's pretty much, it's not an absolute result, because of course you're not seeing the person in real life. The research was made in which patients, they just talk through a chat interface with a real doctor or the AI. But yeah, the AI has significantly better results than the doctor already, like at the moment. So we're gonna reach a point in which, we have to trust AI.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like sometimes if you were to ask an old timer why don't I trust a computer, you'd be like a computer is potentially unpredictable. A computer thinks rationally. It might just think
doesn't have emotions.
I mean, yes, and then we get something like, oh, by the way, it's better than a person at empathy.
At empathy, yeah.
And then you ask yourself the question: does that make sense? Because
we'll put the links of the articles in the description as well, if you guys want to like go look through that. But it's actually wild how like patients, even people going for consultations, believe that the AI is better at empathy than doctor because of like multiple reasons.
But do you think it changes? Because I know that experiment was based on texts. They were
text. Yeah,
it was. Do you think that changes once it? Do you think trust fails once it sees that it's not actually a person talking to them? A physical body helps.
I know for sure, but that's why like changes of paradigm in thinking, they take a lot of time.
So
to
online
be
healthcare is going to completely change. At least not because
no, but most of humans don't trust robots and AIs and like digital things in general.
And
They
how
don't
long
have the
till
trust
that
in it.
changes?
But I cannot give you a number. Like I know that to change, like
Because
yeah,
Because I know for a fact, if I was to ask even myself, say before ChatGPT, would I trust a computer to be my lawyer?
no.
I would say no, you're crazy. But right now, I would say, not too bad.
No.
I mean, he's not going to represent me in court. I'm not going to bring out my ChatGPT and put it on loud volume and please speak.
But, okay, and
But-
and I'm gonna like show you that recording in 5 years
And
when
and
you're gonna be like,
laugh at me.
yes, we're gonna, yeah.
I mean,
like,
that's the thing. You're like, you don't expect it to talk to a judge, but at the same time, now we have that application that we spoke about in the beginning, Rabbit, where you're basically already talking
speaking
to
to the
an
thing,
AI, and
you're
it's,
speaking to the thing.
it's creating its own thing. It's personalized, and it's personalized for you.
Yeah, no, that's actually
And it kind of links to like the whole
Wild.
like Web3 thing of it being non-centralized, because I think you talked about Sam Altman discussing how you can now personalize your AI system for you for different cultures. It's
Yeah.
not restrictive in any way, so it just keeps getting better and it's
No, yeah,
evolving to
but,
fit your
like
perception.
what I would like to maybe underline is that those speculations right now might be falling exactly into the trap of this book, in which maybe we might have all those great things that we're talking about, we're like having exponential growth, at least about AI discoveries, but we might as well reach a technological plateau the same way in 1958 we had like Boeing planes that did not fundamentally change in speed from today's airplanes. We like the air industry, sorry, didn't have much innovation in the past 70 years. And that might be the case for AI as well, but we don't know about that. Of course, we're seeing exponential growth about discoveries being made right now, but we might as well reach a plateau. I hope not, because for multiple reasons, but we might.
But these are different times. In the sense where something like a balloon might just be hyped up by the company that produces it. At that time, you wouldn't have social media to debate your point. Now, everything that is hyped up, it's hyped up by the people. Like, it's the people looking at it and being genuinely impressed.
But I think everyone thinks it was the old time. Every time, like at Dear Balloon, they were like, yeah, that time when we thought like printing press was like a bad thing. We might also be fantasizing over something that's not going to happen during our lifetime. I hope it will, and it probably will, given the trajectory we have. But we might reach a plateau as well. It's something possible.
I mean, yeah, it's something we could completely evade just based on fear. I mean, again, I don't know how I would feel about something that is 10 times smarter than me.
I know,
Or
and
100 times
I don't
smarter.
want to know at the moment. I don't want to know. And Sam Altman as well had a really like interesting thought about AGI when he said that when AGI will show up, people will freak out for 2 weeks and then just go on about their lives.
Yeah,
Like it takes time to implement. It takes time for people to actually understand the tool. It takes time for it to be democratized among like the whole population. And yeah, even if we're gonna see an increase in like productivity, I think people are overhyping the fact that AI is gonna change the world in the next 5 years. It will probably, but maybe like humans will not be obsolete in the next 5 years.
Yeah, but this is one of the things. You either catch the train or you don't. You either welcome it with your open hands or you just end up giving up, and you have to then run after that train. It's one of those things. You either accept it or you don't. I mean, you're definitely one man to choose to accept it. I'm definitely one to choose not. But again, this is as much as I hate to admit it. It is sort of inevitable.
It is sort of inevitable.
Unless we go back to nuclear fission and we just have a nuclear war. And then that all goes
also
back
might
into the
happen.
trash.
That also might happen. But yeah. Like growth is more or less bound to happen. Like I'm not gonna go into details about the second law of thermodynamics, about how like entropy,
Yes.
but like even from a physical perspective, it's hard to advocate against growth because even if we have like limited resources on Earth, we need to change our way of consuming things. Like I don't think ordering 50 t-shirts from Shine being made by like Uyghurs in China is something that is like productive nor like interesting for human brains. I think we need to change our way of consumptions like for some specific aspects. But yeah, growth is inevitable. Like growth is inevitable, and we're like humans and beings in general and systems in general are going for more energy, more growth, more entropy. And yeah, we're that little fire, that little pocket of energy that tries to take everything they can.
I completely agree. I'm very much sure that you made a lot of 18 to 25-year-old girls very sad right now with your Shin comment. But nonetheless, yes. I mean, this podcast we welcome 18 to 25-year-old girls, but
might be hard.
Victor's definitely one for the intellectual ones. So Sheen, we love you. We would always love to sponsor.
Maybe not, but yeah, we'll talk about that.
Capitalism.
That's one of the main factors of
yes.
Are
we missing anything?
Are we missing anything? That's a great question. Let me go through my notes. Oh yeah, but I think it's a good closing point about the book. It talks about it at the very beginning and at the very end. Humanity and humans in general and how media's report it talk a lot about exponential growth.
Yes.
So that function of like we're doing more and more, faster, accelerating. And that leads mathematically to a point of singularity in which everything can exist at any time. We can do anything whenever we want.
Type 1 civilization.
Yeah, type 1, like we're just exponentially growing and we can do anything at any time. And that's something a lot of people fantasize about. But at the moment, even if we need to advocate for progress and positive and sustainable growth, this point of singularity is not reachable because it's not scalable because of Earth resources. So this is something that a lot of people fantasize about, but is not physically possible to put in place at the moment because of Earth resources.
Just theories, yeah.
Yeah,
but, I mean, the idea, basically, going back to the Type 1 civilization, is that we've completely understood all our resources and are capable of using Earth as this unlimited battery.
Yeah,
moving on, we have Type 2 civilization where we collect the energy from the galaxy, but that's maybe not in our lifetime.
Probably not.
So maybe whoever we lead this new podcast to,
yeah,
they might be able to discuss it. But this is like...
Yeah. So I think we're going to wrap up on that. It was diving in Invention and Innovation by Vaclav Smil. I hope you guys enjoyed that podcast. We tried to do as much as we can to have like good historical background, to give our perspectives on things. We probably fucked up on some statistics. We'll probably try to listen and fact check that. And if you guys are able to fact check it, like, or disagree with us,
it's the deeper meaning that matters.
Yeah, it's the deeper meaning that matters. And if you can correct us on anything, don't hesitate to do so, because we learn, we share knowledge. Huh? And yeah, I think that's it. Do you have anything to add?
I mean, welcome to our new community, and hope you enjoy.
And next week with a new
Next
book.
week with a new book, new episode. And that was very nice. This was Victor and Daniel. We were very, very happy to talk to you guys. Hope you enjoyed.